Hello, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me. If this is our first time together, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Patrick Geary. I am an intuitive astrologer and a celestial channel, and I'm here to talk with you about Sagittarius season and all the energy that awaits us, specifically in this sign, and even more specifically as relates to the sun as it's passing through this sign. And I want to say before I begin that the way that I work best is by allowing information to flow through me fresh. So I will record this in one take. It's also Mercury retrograde as I do this. So if I flub over my words or if there are funny bloopers that you can enjoy as I'm talking, thank you so much for your patience and for allowing things to emerge in the perfect way. And before I dive into the astrology and the specifics, I also want to highlight the energy image that I saw for this month, which is what you see above and behind me. And the image that I got for this month was a little girl jumping over a canyon wearing explorer gear. It felt like Indiana Jones, but rather than it being this strong, burly man, it was a young girl in pigtails. And I don't want to dissect this too much. It's totally possible that this came from me. I happen to live with a very adventurous young girl who has blonde pigtails. And also, I want to acknowledge that there is maybe something significant about this. Certainly, when I think about that youth and that freshness, that's something that we see in the imprint of this month, the spirit of adventure very much here with us in Sagittarius. And I wonder if there isn't also something around the feminine energy that's been very much emerging in the field around us as starting to really adventure into new parts of our world, our society, it being free to run. And that's something that I've seen around me. It's something I know many of my clients have been experiencing. It's something that would be most welcome. So I also want to acknowledge that there really is something meaningful about what we see and how we interpret it. So, all of this said, I'm going to pull up one chart for us to take a look at here, and then we'll get to talking. So, the chart I'm going to pull up now, it is the Sagittarius ingress chart. So, this is the chart for the moment when the sun enters the sign of Sagittarius. And I have set it for here in London, and that's going to be happening on Saturday, November 22nd at 1:36 a.m. And you'll see the sun is down here at 0 degrees of Sagittarius. I want to note that as the sun enters Sagittarius, and it really sets the imprint for this month, we also find Mars in Sagittarius, and we'll see the sun chasing Mars this whole month. They won't actually come together until later on in Capricorn in, a month and a half or so. But for now, we know that the sun and Mars are in a fun game of cat and mouse. We also have the moon sitting here in Sagittarius since we've just enjoyed a new moon in Scorpio. And there is something about this delightful new moon energy that also feels like it permeates the month. And maybe this goes back to that image that you see behind me, this image of a young child exploring, almost like not so much taking her first steps, but perhaps having her first big adventure, taking her first big leap over this canyon. And that does capture that new moon energy. And here, what we're looking at is a moon that has perhaps just become visible in the sky. So it's not the day of the new moon itself. We're looking at the day and a half or so after a new moon. And that is when that crescent first becomes visible. And this does have that energy of the first steps, of when things are really starting to move forward, when things are becoming visible. And maybe that captures that phase of life particularly well. I also want to highlight that the planet that we would associate with Sagittarius as our local representative, Jupiter, is sitting up here in the sign of Cancer. And Jupiter in Cancer has a wonderful, nourishing imprint. So it's interesting too that I saw this energy image of a young child and thinking about how we are nourishing a sense of adventure and how we're being invited to nourish this sense of adventure. And again, that would bring perhaps a more feminine imprint to it when we think about Cancer and that maternal energy. How are we stepping in to incubate and nourish this energy as it sits with us? And I want to give a shout out here to this grand trine that Jupiter is experiencing. It's over here with Saturn. We could also maybe give a little bit of a nod here to Neptune. And we've also got Mercury in this grand trine energy as we are entering Sagittarius season. So, what struck me here, if I think about Jupiter and Saturn, and when I think about these two planets working together, and I love these two planets working together, Jupiter has this wonderful sense of what's possible, what can expand, what can grow here. And Saturn has this wonderful feeling of what can I ground? What can I make real? What can I take from the field of possibility and bring it into actuality? And so when I see Mercury in this trine, and let's again give a nod to Neptune, which adds maybe a sense of deeper connection or a sense of imagination, really that knowledge that we really are working with a field of reality. Reality isn't one thing that exists before us, it is an entire field, and what we see is a representation of what we are projecting into the field. So, with Mercury coming in here, and Mercury really referring so often to our thoughts and to our words, I'm really expecting, maybe not even expecting, maybe noticing that this month, what you say and what you think can have a lot of force and can truly make things real before your very eyes. So, if you're into manifesting, if you're into materializing, if you're into drawing things from the imaginal into the real, and in some sense, I suppose we're always into that because we're doing it all the time. If you're consciously embracing that practice, this is a month where you may find special power and really being mindful about what your thoughts are, being mindful about what you say. Words are spells. We know this. You speak it, it becomes real for you, if nothing else. So just keeping that in your awareness as we move into a more detailed look at what this month awakes. Okay. So you might notice that we're experiencing with Pluto in the early degrees of Aquarius. When the sun is moving into a sign, it's getting that initial hit from Pluto. We had this with Scorpio. It was a square with Scorpio. When we have the sun coming in to see Pluto from Sagittarius, it's a different energy. It's a sextile. And sextile is more of a harmonizing influence. I think of it as a friend by your side, somebody you could tap on the shoulder and ask for assistance. It can also be associated as some sort of a talent or something that we can draw on, a gift that's present with us. And with Pluto sitting in Aquarius, this tells me that maybe there is some gift that's available to us in terms of the power that we draw from. So Pluto is always an invitation into deeper power. With Aquarius, there's an invitation into deeper power that is unique, that is expressly us, and that is available through integrity. That's what I think the key is here, working with Pluto and Aquarius, is are you in integrity? And if you can align with your integrity, then it's going to unlock some of that power that can be available to you. So with Scorpio, we might have felt more of a test in some way to our integrity, or been put into a situation that was challenging or difficult, or maybe brought us into that, I guess, the possibility of making a choice. Here, it's something that you'd want to hold in your awareness more expressly so that you can consciously choose to align yourself with integrity, even if you're not finding yourself in circumstances that are particularly pressing or demand that you make a choice. Can you still call on integrity and can you still let that to invite you into the deeper power within? So that aspect is already going to be felt as the sun enters into Sagittarius on November 22nd. It will perfect or complete on November 23rd, so just the day after. And the next aspect that we'll look at is on November 28th, when we have the sun squaring the moon in Pisces. So this would be the first quarter moon as it would appear in the sky. And this is, again, it's growing from that sense of adventure, that initial imprint that we had. And with that moon in Pisces, it really feels to me like this is that adventure into the infinite. It's an adventure into flow. And the first quarter moon is often a time when we're looking to make an adjustment, when we're looking to make an assertion, when we're looking to set goals. And what really feels like could be present or possible here is, Can we allow ourselves to go with the flow? Can we choose to let the flow take us where it wants to go, rather than having a carefully charted course or a map, which can be helpful to ignite a sense of adventure, but can also at some point hold us back? I'm also really thinking about how maps, as wonderful as they can be, are flat, and how the terrain, as we experience it and look at it, is far from flat. So that map might not give the full picture. And if we keep trying to go with this limited two-dimensional understanding, we're going to confine how we get to experience that adventure. Versus if we let the topography and the feeling of the ground below our feet guide us, perhaps that's something that invites us to embrace that spirit of adventure and to nurture it even more. And then on November 30th, we have Venus joining us in Sagittarius. This is a big change for Venus, moving from Scorpio, very internally oriented sign, into Sagittarius. Venus in Sagittarius tends to be more externally expressive. It has a real flair and a taste for luxury. It enjoys splashing out. I always like to feel that change between signs. To me, it's sort of like at the end of a yoga pose. If you've been holding it for a long time, it's just really nice to feel the change. So it can be really refreshing when a planet enters a sign. And here, especially shifting that orientation from Scorpio, which is so inwardly fixated, to Sagittarius, which is really external, it's movement, it is upward. It's a very different feeling. It goes from looking in to looking up and out. So really having that sense too, as Venus is welcomed into Sagittarius, that we're starting to express some of those Venusian qualities, beauty, harmony, even how we relate with one another, perhaps in more extroverted ways, and ways that really do mm, embrace that wildfire spirit. And then on December 4th, we'll be enjoying a full moon in Gemini as the moon comes to oppose the sun. And here, it feels very active and very activating, in part because this moon will be square the nodes, the north node and the south node. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But what this means is that this full moon is sitting in between eclipses. So we're now halfway between eclipse seasons. And this can be certainly a turning point or a pivotal point. And with that full moon in Gemini, Gemini is delightfully garrulous. And a big difference between Sagittarius and Gemini, Sagittarius is very much sitting with this knowledge that there is one universal truth. And that everything that we do, everything we experience contributes to our idea of the truth. Gemini sits with a parallel understanding that there are multiple truths and that everything can be true around us. So when I think about this, it feels like an invitation into your own truth and into your own understanding of the world can be enhanced when you appreciate that everyone else has that same invitation, that they're all taking that invitation, that we're all developing a sense of truth on one level, and also that the way that we develop it, how we experience it, and what is true for any of us in any given moment is different. So, can we allow for every adventure to be experienced differently by every person who's there? And that can be that uniting force and what really gives us fuel. And again, nurtures and incubates that sense of adventure, giving us permission for us all to do so in a way that really aligns us with our own internal truth, which is what we're here to do. And I mentioned that that full moon will be square the nodes. The sun will experience this square very directly on December 5th, and it will be at this point that we call the south bending. And when a planet is square the nodes, this is again a very activating point. The nodes can, among other things, they can certainly represent that placement between past and future. There is a polarity with that south node representing more perhaps where we have been from one perspective, the north node representing where we are going. There are other ways to see this, the south node being what we are releasing, the north node being what we are welcoming. There are so many ways to see and appreciate the nodes, regardless of what your personal perspective is or what lands with you. I do want to acknowledge that this is, again, a crisis point. And I do not mean crisis in a bad way. What I mean is it's an inflection point. It feels like it's a choice point here. And at that south bending point, what we're often asked to do is to embrace more of whatever sits before us. So here, especially, it feels like embracing a sense of adventure and having that feeling like you are moving towards fate, you are moving towards destiny, you are moving towards providence, knowing that this is what you came here for. And it might feel like that sun feels distant on that day, but rather than feeling like the sun is low in the sky or the sun is small or it's far away, as planets can sometimes feel at that south bending point, it's like we might want more of them, but they don't feel like they're totally here. Just feeling that gorgeous invitation to ride off into the sunset, which for me is one of those beautiful Sagittarius images of, wow, there's something there, and I'd like to experience more of it. And how do I let this joy, let this recognition of how much I like this energy move me forward? So I really think about gratitude. I think especially if you like to have practices around worshiping the sun, or if you enjoy sun salutations, or even if you just want to go out and look at the sun on that day on December 5th, greet it in the morning, greet it in the evening, just with a humble respect for what it is, for what it offers you, and consciously choose to welcome more of that light and more of that sun into your life as, again, another wonderful way to incubate that sense of adventure. And then on December 11th, we'll have the sun square the moon in Virgo. So this would be the third quarter moon in the sky, which is often helping us to release things. And with that moon in Virgo here, again, releasing a sense of control, releasing a sense of needing to know where you're going, releasing that desire to almost kind of chronicle your experiences. And these are wonderful qualities that Virgo offers. And also, they can sometimes get in the way of us experiencing the joy of an adventure in the moment. And there's that old axiom that the best laid plans, right? And when we think about how the best laid plans just go up in flames, which is kind of a wonderful image for this particular third quarter moon, there is a real freedom in that. There is that wonderful movie. You probably see it in movies, like it's a wonderful trope where somebody just throws their cell phone into the water, or they rip up their diary or their planner and they just decide to go out and explore. That's really what this feels like to me. And it's also got that energy of coming home to yourself, coming home to what is natural for you. And then on December 12th, we have Mercury entering into Sagittarius, where it began its retrograde back in November. So it is, again, taking on more of that storyteller archetype. Mercury in Scorpio can be very direct, very incisive, very to the point. And Mercury in Sagittarius is very expansive. It likes a detour. It likes to take the long way around. It likes to tell tall tales. So, really inviting that storytelling spirit back into your life. And then on December 15th, we'll see Mars exit Sagittarius and head into Capricorn, which is, again, a notable change in energy. It sort of cools down that Sagittarius fire with Mars leaving, Mars in Capricorn bringing some of that, I'd say, like that committed, strategic, hardworking energy. And it'll be nice to see the Sun and Mars coming together there next month. But for now, we can just notice that Mars is exiting, the Sun will soon follow. On December 17th, we'll have the Sun coming into square Saturn. This is a really nice time to ground your confidence, to ground your ability to be in the flow, to ground your right to be free, to ground your right to have an adventure. And it may be sometimes that we experience that with a Saturn square from external pressure or from internal pressure or from questions or doubts about whether we can, whether we have permission. I want to reassure you that you can, that you do have permission, that you came here to be on adventure. What is life if not one giant adventure? You came here to enjoy yourself. It is safe to nurture that. It is safe to be that. And also, it's okay that sometimes that gets called into question, or that sometimes, you might plan a day where you feel fancy free and something might happen and require you to take responsibility. over something that perhaps you weren't expecting to. Saturn certainly likes to deliver us that gorgeous sense of responsibility. And there is responsibility that's present when we have a sense of adventure. If you're going out into the desert, for example, you want to be responsible about what you are wearing, what you are bringing. It facilitates an adventure. So responsibility can facilitate your freedom. It can facilitate that sense of adventure if you allow it to. And then on December 20th, we'll enjoy a new moon in Sagittarius. And that's a wonderful way to start to bring this month to a close. So we get that great hit of that sun and moon coming together, planting a seed in this Sagittarius soil for how we'll get to continue to experience this sense of adventure over the course of the next month, even as that sun moves into Capricorn. And then on December 21st, we'll have the sun squaring Neptune. And here again, this is inviting us into a sense of imagination, into a sense of flow, into a sense of everything is possible. With that Sun and Neptune in a square relationship, we do want to be sure that we are grounding ourselves where we are, that we allow ourselves to get knowingly swept off of our feet in a moment, but that we don't expect that we won't be put back down on the ground. That can be sometimes what I find. Maybe on the more challenging side with Neptune is when we expect that we're going to be swept off of our feet and just fly far and farther and farther and farther up into the sky. And very often what happens, or perhaps always what happens, is we're invited to put our feet back here on Earth. So I invite you to enjoy the play, to enjoy the imagination, to enjoy a beautiful flowing adventure on that particular day, to let it take you where it wants to take you, and also to keep your feet firmly on the ground on another level, to know that this is where you live, that this is where you belong. Again, it's safe to be here. It's safe to have that grounded sense of adventure when you have your feet on the ground or you have those wonderful, nice, heavy hiking boots that help you stay connected with the earth that is below you. Even as you dream, you imagine, you know that more is possible. So I'm really looking forward to this month. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you want to connect with me, I'll put my website down below. I'd be glad to see you one-on-one. If you'd like to follow me, I also write regular weekly posts on Substack. I'll put a link down to that as well. And I will be doing a Sagittarius retreat. So if you're seeing this before Saturday, and I'm trying to remember what date Saturday is. It's floating out of my head. But it's the day when the sun is entering Sagittarius. So if you're seeing it before then and you want to register, you are more than welcome. I'll put a link down to that below. There will be a replay. And if you're not able to make this one, there will be a Capricorn retreat next month. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much and big love.